So it's International Women's Day and I'm here in Brixton, lovely Brixton, here to meet Olivia Darby from the Wonder Foundation. Olivia is the Director of Programs and Policy, and the Wonder Foundation are a really interesting charity. They support women and girls around the world with access to education and various different initiatives that she's going to share with you. I'm really excited to share this with you. So yeah, let's get to it.
Hi, Theo. Really well, how are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I'm so excited to do this interview.
Excellent. Guys, Olivia Darby is the Director of Programs and Policy here at the Wonder Foundation. That's correct, yeah? Excellent. Olivia, thank you for giving me the time today. Can you tell us a little bit more about Wonder Foundation? What you guys do, how it all started?
Of course. So Wonder was founded by a group of young people, including me, but from all over the world.
Okay.
We were here in London studying or just graduated, and we could see, that there were so many amazing projects run by local women, often from the countries where some of our founders were from, that weren't getting the attention or the support that they deserved.
Okay.
So that's really where we started, that we wanted to make sure that local people doing amazing work were recognised and were able to be part of the conversations about international development and women's empowerment, that the amazing work that they were doing was recognised and also shared with other people, because so often people who are working really hard don't have time to blow their own trumpet, to be part of policy and wider conversations. And that's really what we wanted to do, to make sure they had the resources to do their work as well as possible, as sustainably as possible. And from that kind of grand dream, we started Wonder. We decided we were going to focus on women's empowerment through education, and we've been refining our approach ever since, working with the most amazing women leaders in the countries that we work in, which is now 22 countries.
Wow.
So it's been an adventure.
That is amazing. I was reading about the empowerment through education. How does that work? So do you partner with universities or something, or education providers? How does it work?
So we work with education providers who are meeting the need in the way that is locally appropriate. So a lot of who we work with is vocational training providers.
Okay.
Vocational training is amazing because obviously the route in, let's say, Nigeria from school to a good job it's not easy, and you can do the right degree and you'll still not end up with the right job if you don't have the connections, for example, or there are 2.5 million people or more graduating in Nigeria each year, of whom only about a third are going to get a graduate level job.
Wow.
If you do quality vocational training, you get a great qualification, which means that you have the skills that employers are looking for.
Yeah.
So it's a great route for young women, truly into something that is going to improve their income. But also it's so important to us that the education that we deliver isn't just about getting a certificate. It's also about helping young women to be, the leaders in their own lives, to have the skills to lead in their families, to lead in their communities, to be the women that we want to be ourselves. That's what we really want, that someone leaving our projects is truly able to make, to set goals, to dream, and then to be able to turn those dreams into reality.
I think you just touched on something amazing there. It's just the ability to have the dream in the first place.
Yeah.
Because, we have this saying a lot of the time, if you can't be it if you can't see it.
Yeah.
you know, and if you're not seeing that opportunity, then you can't envision and then have that dream of yourself achieving that. So, going back to the education then, I mean, if you're partnering with education providers, why, in a nutshell, what I'm trying to get to is, why is Wonder Foundation needed to create that opportunity? Why is that not there already in these countries?
The opportunity is there for some women, definitely, and we work with established local partners. So we really believe in the expertise that our local partners have. Our role is simply to help them to have more impact and more tools and resources to do that work, that, you know, to address the needs that they have already identified, and also to share the amazing work that they do with others. I think, you know, so many conversations about women's empowerment, international development, really struggle to engage the people who are actually involved in those projects, the people who actually have that nitty-gritty experience.
Why do you think that is? Why does it not engage?
I think it's simply how people prioritize. You know, I've met so many women, whether I've been working in this country, whether I've been working elsewhere, and if, you know, it's 5 o'clock and they have a meeting to go to, you know, where they're going to share their expertise with other people, and those people are people of influence who could do something else, and there's a queue of people out of the door. You know, there are families waiting for their services, there are girls wanting to talk about their problems. They are going to choose to stay 90% of the time. And that means that, you know, you're prioritizing this immediate need, and you're not prioritizing, you know, something that is less tangible.
And it's like fighting fires rather than planning to not have fires in the first place.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense. What would you say are the biggest barriers for these people into education, just in their own, like, for the beneficiaries?
Before I come to that, actually, I think the other side of that question you asked is the barriers that those women face to being heard. Is also how you know to be heard is because of the environment that you are in, the education you have, the access that you have to these things. We know there are so many people in this country where we talk about citizenship at school who still don't know how to have their voices heard and who has the power. And that's even more so in, you know, countries that we're working where those channels are less clear. They're not a website saying get involved. So, you know, there are those barriers to them. And then the barriers to education. I mean, there are so many barriers to education. When I was recently in Nigeria just before Christmas, I met this girl who was called Overcomer. And I just loved that her name was Overcomer.
That's her name?
That is her name.
Wow, that's a
It's
wicked
an awesome
name.
I loved that her name was Overcomer because actually she had applied to the school the year previous.
Right.
It's a vocational training school, and her parents had not allowed her to come. They had banned her from coming. They wanted her to do something else. And she had fought her corner, and a year passed, and she had come back, and I met her on her second day of school, and she was just so happy to be there. And I think that's the thing, that, you know, so many girls don't have that, they don't have the knowledge, as you said, you know, it's about being able to dream. Yeah. You have to know what opportunities are available to you and to think beyond the next step. How is this step going to lead into my next step? Yeah. And that depends on the people around us and what they know and what they're pushing us into doing. Yeah. And so many girls, you know, really have to go along with the will of their parents, the people who are paying their fees. And I think, you know, there's a very good focus on the girls who are completely out of school, but there are also, I mean, the girls we typically work with are girls who are in school or have got through quite a lot of their education, but still after that may not really have more income generation opportunities than if they'd never really been to school at all. Because you're still going to end up with a small business that you haven't really been told how to run. Your family still doesn't really have any money to invest in you starting that business. So giving a girl the chance, to have the education that she gets, to also be given the skills, the soft skills, so that if she chooses afterwards to start her own business, she's going to have a much firmer foundation to run it off.
Yeah.
That's great if that's what she chooses. And if she does choose to go and work for someone else in the formal sector, that she also, she's a girl who knows herself, a woman who is aware of what her rights are, who knows what's right, what's wrong, can defend other people, can become an employer herself. That's what we're really looking for.
It's amazing. So obviously it's International Women's Day. The reason why we got in touch with you guys is because you focus on women. So touching on that then, how does it differ in these countries that you work in with the opportunity and access to education for men and women? I know that's a new question I've just thrown in, but...
No, it's a great question. It varies from country to country because obviously gender roles are very cultural. But an example, again from Nigeria actually, of what happened over COVID was that a lot of families had maybe one device, one smartphone, one tablet, something like that. And that would be given to the boys of the family to study from.
Right.
So the girls wouldn't have access to that, or data, because of course data is very expensive in many places. Data would be prioritised for boys to use, and if there was any left, then the girls could study.
Right.
At the same time, when a woman is at home, so often she is meant to be doing home things.
Right.
So we would have girls who were studying from home, but they were always seen like they should have been helping.
You're still expected to be housekeeping and...
Exactly. And they would be constantly interrupted in what they were doing. So, but I think, again, it's important to be really positive about the fact that, dads and brothers also play really important roles in empowering women and girls.
Yeah.
And also that, we really always try to bring them on the girls' journey. If you can convince a dad to educate one of his daughters, then it speaks for itself. Her success speaks for itself, and you see dads becoming evangelists of girls' education, and that's a really beautiful thing to see, and something that we're always keen to champion. That's
brilliant. So I've got 2 daughters and 3 sisters. We'll make sure I haven't missed anyone out, so they're going to get annoyed. Yeah, I haven't. But I'm always championing, empowerment and look after yourself and don't rely on anyone to provide for you. Sure, if you meet someone one day and it's great and you partner up and you live happily ever after, that's amazing. But this sort of old school model of, the man is in control, the man controls everything, is so old school. I know that we're a lot more modern, well, we hope we're a lot more modern in Western countries where we are now. Are you seeing, as time goes on, are you seeing that shift happening in other countries where it, previously wasn't? Or, how, I'm trying to get to, how well are we doing in terms of progress?
I think it's really hard to judge. And it's amazing, because actually one of the things we're going to talk about is data. It's amazing actually how little data there is sometimes on some of these things. And I think it's also about how you think about it beyond the obvious statistics. There are different models of leadership, for example. We did a program that finished a year ago that was with young women, many of whom are from minorities, from 7 European countries. And I think one of those things that we came across was it's not just, for example, about education. Like, girls are doing great in education in Europe, often better than boys. And yet at the same time you see, 10 years into their career, they're doing less well. And it's not just about women having babies. It's also because women respond differently and they work differently. And for me, I'd love to see a world where we're not looking at workers as individuals only about their own targets.
Yeah.
I think it's a very kind of female style of leadership where your success is in your colleague's success.
Absolutely.
And that is recognised as excellence, because that empowers both men and women. Not everyone wants to be that kind of...
It's also it's a more realistic approach, right? Because it's a holistic view of the organisation. Everyone plays a role and they're not all the same. Some of them might be targets. Others might be support the team, and both are as equal in value because they can't exist without the other. I don't know if I've gone off into a tangent.
No, I think, for me, one of the great, I guess I've been working at Wonder for almost 10 years now. And one of the great kind of things that has helped me to do my work better is to realise that I can't be good at everything.
Yeah.
I'm good at what I'm good at, and I have amazing colleagues who are good at other things. And together, I think we've seen that this week with our response to the Ukraine crisis. Together, we're a great team. And we are so much more than the sum of our parts. And I think that is the workplace that serves women and girls well, because it's one that really appreciates the value of people, rather than it's just like, did you meet this target yourself for yourself?
I think that's a very old school way of approaching not just business or an organisation, but anything. This sort of like stacking shelves mentality. Oh well, you haven't stacked enough shelves today, so there's more factors at play. All right. Well, we kind of we're about to dip into the research part. So let me ask you then. Research, obviously, I'm from the research industry. How does research play a role in the work that you do?
We are constantly doing research, not in the same way as you, but in the way that we can with the resources that we have.
Right.
It is such an important tool for us to have as much information as possible about the themes we're dealing with and the context that we're dealing with. It's really hard to explain something to someone who has no idea about the place you're working without hard facts, because otherwise you're just yourself, and I can say, this has happened, but if I'm writing that on paper, they don't believe me.
Yeah.
And a lot of the places that we're working in are really data poor. It's a real battle for us actually to find good data from academic literature, even from kind of grey literature.
Yeah.
You're relying on newspaper sources and you still don't find that much. But it's a fascinating thing for us as to cast a light on places and really to say to people, okay, there isn't much information out here, like, over to you. We'd love you to take this up, and rather than tell us that you don't have much information, run with it and find that information.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you find that people are planning projects, they're making decisions about policy that are based on data that's very old.
Or just assumption, anecdotal. I think this, so let's do it.
Exactly. Or as we've seen, like recently in some projects that we've not designed ourselves, this worked in Kenya, so it must work in the Ivory Coast.
Yeah.
It doesn't, and unless you really consult, and also that you realise that actually that journey of consultation is really important. Like, that's when you learn how people work and how people think, what's important to them. Is this idea you have, even is the goal the right goal? It's not wasted time. It's always worthwhile.
But that's the reason why our industry exists. That's what our job is to do, is to tell brands and our clients, hey, this one, great idea. This one, not so much. So do you have any interesting insights from research that you've done, or has it mostly been secondary research?
So a lot of it's secondary research. At the moment, we are just starting an impact study that should be really exciting of one of our projects in Kenya. So we're training 800 women and girls there through a combination of vocational training and livelihoods training. And we are commissioning a Kenyan researcher to do this work, which is really what we really wanted. This is really interesting for us because we've been working with them to pilot a new method of mentoring there that's based on research from the Harvard Center for the Developing Child.
It's a new method of mentoring?
Yeah, so it's new, as in like it hasn't been delivered yet in an African country.
Okay.
And a lot of programs are very kind of culturally specific, I would say. This one is very much evidence-based on kind of how people's brains work.
Right.
And then our local partners have studied this, and they have worked with their own teams to think, how can we implement this in a way that works in our context?
Okay.
So we really want to test that to hopefully demonstrate that it's amazing.
Is it top secret? Or
no, I mean, so the system is called Empath.
Okay.
And it kind of comes back to what we said before about dreaming. It's about helping people to set goals.
Right.
Because obviously first you need to be able to set goals and think beyond your immediate experience of like, what am I eating tonight?
Yeah.
And then to work out how to put that into action. So the whole system is based around research around building executive function. And yeah, giving people the chance to be those leaders in their own lives, which is just so important.
Sounds really, you've got 800 of them.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing.
We hope this is what the research is going to say. I will definitely share it.
Share it. We'll definitely help share it around. And guys, if you're watching, make sure you check this out. Just keep an eye on it. That sounds awesome. Okay. Wow. So, all right, going on to my next question then. In terms of when you're trying to conduct research, you kind of mentioned it, that there isn't really that many providers out there. Is there any other big challenges that you come across with trying to actually do research?
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting question I had yesterday actually with someone. I mean, there are also lots of ethical issues around research. I mean, something we really thought about quite early on was that we shouldn't be researching people and not digesting it to them in a way that they can understand. Because otherwise...
How do you mean digesting it to them?
So let's imagine you are researching a community, and then you're talking about them. I mean, we always want to talk about people in ways that we would want to be spoken about in.
Yeah.
But then, you know, also maybe their literacy level isn't that great.
Yeah.
And you know, it's always a question of resources. Like sometimes it's taken us time to translate things back into people's language. But you know, that if you are researching a community, it shouldn't just be about you doing it for you, but also it's great to know about yourself and to know what other people are writing about you, because even people who are perhaps not very formally educated are still people who are doing amazing things and can use that knowledge for themselves, for their own things.
It's very interesting. It's very interesting. I spoke to a charity, was it last week? And they said a similar thing in that, you know, researchers will come to them and say, hey, can you help us to find X, Y, Z? They get these people for them, say, take part in that research, great. And then they never hear from them again afterwards.
Yeah.
And they don't know what came from the research.
Yeah.
And I think particularly for charities, that information is vital. But what you just said, if I'm not mistaken, is actually for the participants as well, to get some knowledge of, you know, where that insight fitted into the research. That's interesting.
I mean, wherever possible. It's not always possible. I mean, and people have busy lives and they might not be that interested. But that doesn't mean to say that you should just exclude them. And I think that is the other thing, and exactly what you've just said. You know, lots of people get in touch saying, we want to do research on this project, can you help us? Or we want to talk to refugees, which is great. I'm super in favour of people doing work that helps us to understand big problems. But at the same time, you know, sometimes it's not an understanding of how this can re-traumatize people.
Yeah.
And the fact that projects are really busy delivering stuff, and that, you know, people don't sometimes want to move on with their lives.
Yeah.
And it's a tricky thing because, you know, having evidence, having data, having research is so important, but really we have to be so careful about
Safeguard.
not exploiting.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Tell me more about that.
So obviously it's really important not to exploit people, but I think that also has to be like a more refined consent process. Sometimes we've spoken to people and they've been happy in that moment to share their story, and then later they've said, actually, I don't want to. And that's hard when you've made, you know, a big effort and lots of resources and you've spent time editing, but actually that is their story and it's very intimate to them, and we don't have a right to it, even if they did sign off on that consent form. I'd hate for myself to be in those shoes, and sometimes people don't have, you know, what's normal to us is new to them.
Yeah.
And when they're giving consent, they don't really understand what they're consenting to.
Well,
We have to really be
work
be
better.
ethical.
No, I agree. We try to, you know, when we're doing consent forms and stuff, we don't just send it, we actually give them a call, talk them through, hey, this is actually what's going to happen, this is where it's going to be used, da 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 da. Just because, it's like terms and conditions.
Yeah.
You know, how many people just tick, I agree, I haven't read it, you know? So would you say like funding is a challenge for getting research done?
Definitely.
Yeah.
We're lucky that in some of the larger projects that we've had, you know, research and demonstrating the impact of that project, getting an external evaluator has been part of that. But for smaller projects, it is a challenge. One of the things I'm currently trying to get research funding for is a project here at Baytree, which is called Interschool, which Wonder has helped to fund. It's a massive issue that there are lots of teenagers who come to this country, lots of different migration stories. Some of them are unaccompanied minors, some have come to join family, you know, lots of complex stories, and they end up unable to get a place at school, which is actually their right.
Unable to get a place at school?
Yeah, so they're applying to school and the school doesn't have room, or the school doesn't want to take them in the middle of the year, they want to take them, you know, the beginning of the school year, and you end up with lots of young people who, I mean, what do you do if you're a 16-year-old, 14-year-old who is not going to school? It's definitely not good for your mental health, really not good for your self-esteem. You're not going to make friends if you're a recent migrant. It can be very dangerous because who are the other children who are out of school during the day?
Yeah.
And, you know, bad things do happen. You know, when we started working on this issue over a decade ago, actually I was working on this issue before Wonder was started. I thought it was such an obvious thing. I thought it would be picked up by the council.
Yeah.
You know, these kids have a legal right to education.
Yeah.
It's not working. So you need to do research in order to demonstrate the scale of the need, because otherwise it's just us giving, you know, as you said, anecdotal data based upon a few stories of a few people. I was speaking to someone the other day who was saying, it's true, it's the same for people that they're working with in North London. Who knows what the scale of the problem is in the country? It's probably, you know, thousands.
Yeah. You can't fix
but
problems.
if you don't know, no one's going to listen to you.
Absolutely. How can the research industry help?
Oh, I will definitely take you up on this offer. I think for us, you know, research is something I've learnt, not something maybe I've studied. I mean, of course I did bits at university. I think it's great always to have access to skills of people who really know what they're doing, who have refined consent processes that, you know, charities can build upon, that have been thought through properly, you know, skills, just asking questions in empowering ways. You know, these are things that you do every day because you know that that's what gets good answers from people.
Yeah.
And I think there are lots of people in the charity sector who really want to do research. They're scared about it. I remember when we started, we were very scared about not doing it well enough. And actually, we just realised doing it at all was better than not doing it.
Yeah.
But you can always improve the way you do it. So having access to people who really know what they're doing and even can just give tips, advice in your design process is a really valuable thing.
I guess it kind of goes back to what you mentioned earlier about, you know, fighting fires. You know, when you're so busy fighting the good fight, then taking some mental space away to say, okay, let me get in touch with some researchers and see what we can actually achieve regardless. So maybe one of the things, I'm just going to throw it in there as well, the research industry can be proactive in reaching out to you guys and saying, you know, have you thought about this? Could we help you in this way?
I mean, I think that's a really super offer. And I think on the other side of that, something I think you understand is how slow the charity sector can be, because there are so many fires to fight.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it's amazing when you have corporate volunteers, people with real expertise who want to help. But they also need to understand that when we appear to be slow, it's not because we're not competent. It's because the pace of the work we do is different. And reaching out to people with complex lives is always challenging. So it's brilliant, it is always that thing of trying to step also into the shoes of the lives of the people that we're working with, who are really trying to understand their needs and how we can work together. It's
a big one. It's the key to everything, isn't it?
Yeah.
So guys, it's International Women's Day today. Well, it's not really, we're filming a few days previously, but when you're watching it, it's International Women's Day. This week, we're donating a portion of our proceeds to you guys to support your work. Oh, hello, someone's looking through the window. You guys take donations from individuals as well as companies? Or?
We love donations. Yeah. We can take donations on our website, we can take donations by bank transfer, and we can give you a link if you want.
We'll share it. Guys, in the description or whatever, there'll be a link. If you want to support, please go ahead and do so. Any last comments you want to talk about? Any new developments that you guys are working on that you think you'd like to shine a light on?
I think one of the things I'd like to shine a light on actually is the young leaders that we've been working on in safe migration. That came out of the work we've done on vocational training. We saw that this was a risk to the young people engaged in the young women engaged in our programs, and we had amazing young leaders in Nigeria and the Ivory Coast who were working on creating these resources. And the amazing way that they have engaged with the Ukraine crisis. We identified then, or they identified, that there was really a lack of data for young people from their countries wanting to go abroad safely, or what support they could get when they were abroad. And they were the ones who highlighted to us, the issues that are going on for minorities currently in the Ukraine crisis. And I think that's the amazing thing in our work, that we really do see so much solidarity between our different partners in different places, the way that they encourage each other when there are crises. It was so lovely to see the response that our Nigerian partners had when we had the typhoon in the Philippines just before Christmas, which knocked down the roof of the school that we work with there.
Wow.
And greatly affected many of the students and their families. And I think that's a real beauty of the work that we do, that this kind of sense of solidarity and learning that everyone is doing from each other. I think if we listen to each other, I saw this beautiful phrase last week, which was listen generously.
I love that.
I loved it too, and I think that's, if you listen generously, you'll always do things better. Yeah.
I got a bit of a less poetic version. 2 ears, 1 mouth. Wicked interview. Thank you so much, Olivia.
No, thank you.
And,
what a pleasure.
Best of luck.